Well, hello again and good morning. Welcome back to the channel, if you can call it that. Um, it's the second day of February today. I hope that we're back in swing. I hope we enjoyed the Christmas holidays. As usual, I'm going to try to be without preamble. My first video had explained how I arrived at an April to mid-May Rapture window period as my interpretation of Joshua's prophecy. Today I'm going to try to explain why I think that Joshua is not lying. I'll explain why I believe him. Um, in order to do so, I'm going to have to set the stage, create some background. So please bear with me because it might be a bit lengthy. I have to start with how my life began. So I was born into a very God-fearing family in Nigeria back in the day. So church on a Sunday was a given. It was not negotiable. That was a bare minimum. There would usually be Bible study on a Monday. There'd be midweek service on a Wednesday. There'd be prayers on Friday. There'd be cleaning the church and rehearsals on Saturday, and then back again to church on Sunday. Sometimes there'd be week-long events, then throw in the odd night vigil every month or two, that sort of thing. So life for me was sort of triangular. Now, in my first year of secondary school on the JS1 in Nigeria, I had a friend called Bassi. He was a very fashionable young man. His mom was a nurse at the time. His dad was, I don't remember, but I think he was maybe a businessman or something like that. They were comfortable, middle class. So Bassi was the very first uh, Mario video game that I ever played, and Game Boy, the Nintendo Game Boy. This was a big deal in the 90s in Nigeria. So just to kind of set the stage. When we got to Jazz to for the entire first term, we didn't see Bassi, and we wondered what was going on. About that same time, my parents transitioned back to the Presbyterian Church, which is where we were born and baptized anyway. Um, it turns out that Bassi's parents attended the congregation that we had joined, which was a small, close-knit congregation. And I was on fire as well, I have to add. Um, Soon after we joined, a message came through to pray for Bassi that he'd been unwell. That was when it occurred to me that Bassi hadn't been in school the entire term because of ill health. And so I poured my heart out to God in prayer that Sunday, asking for healing for my friend. The very next Sunday, news came through that Bassi had died. And so I said to myself, well, it's God's will. As is customary in Nigeria, when you've had a wedding or a funeral, whenever you've had an event, usually we'll come back to church the next Sunday to give thanks. We call it Thanksgiving. Um, so what happened was Baskin's mom came to church the Sunday after it was announced that he had died, to give a testimony. But what she described was that, like I said, Bassi was a very fashionable man. He'd gone to buy a ring. And from the moment he bought that ring, it was demonic attack. It turns out the ring opened up a demonic portal into the family and oppressed that young man until he died. It was demonic attack after demonic attack after demonic attack until the boy died. As his health declined, his parents took him to hospital. Remember, his mom was a nurse. She was a nurse at the federal hospital in the town we lived. Money wasn't the issue, so they went through every diagnostic procedure the big consultants had called for. The boy's health continued to decline anyway, and he died. Ah, when Bass's mom narrated this at the church, I said to myself, hang on a minute. If Basia had died from a pneumonia, from a leukemia, I could understand that. But if you're telling me that Bassi died from demonic oppression, where does that leave me? You see? I said to myself, what then is the guarantee that when I pray to God to ask for forgiveness for my sins, that He hears me when I pray? And that was the beginning of my crisis of faith. This was 1999. Yeah, I was in my early teens at the time. As the years wore on, the questions got more and more, and my anger toward God got more and more intense, such that by the time I was in university, I was a proper menace. I felt that if I felt that if God, being omniscient, knew that Adam was going to betray him in the Garden of Eden, and he went on ahead anyway to ask to give him that task that he knew he was going to fail at, then he could not be a loving God. He had to be a sadist. That was my take on it. I won't go into too much detail some of the things I would say and do. Just know that I was uh, a full-on hater of God by the time I got to my university years. But there was something interesting that was happening even through that period. God left a spark inside of me. He left a spark inside of me anyway, such that in my quiet moments I would cry out to him and say, it won't take you anything to answer this question that I have. It won't take anything at all to sort out some of these problems, these issues I have in my head. And God would say nothing. And I'd say, oh, well, yeah, what are we. Yeah, of course not. Yeah. Anyway, life carried on. I left the country. It was while I was away. I couldn't tell you when it happened, but this happened a couple of years ago. It was a gentle persuasion, but powerful. I couldn't tell you, I didn't see any visions, there was no dreams, there was no voices, no nothing. It was just this gentle persuasion inside of me. And I felt God saying to me, the answers you seek are there, but you're only going to get them on the day you stand in front of me and not a moment before. Until that day, walk with me. What happened after this was that it became impossible. I suddenly found myself without any fight in me anymore. I struggled to have that same animus I had toward God before. It's a true story. Anyway, I went back again, taking baby steps. It was baby steps with God. It's still a process. But what happened was that God gradually began to strip me. Many Christians can relate to it. He began to strip me of certain bad habits I had acquired over the course of a lifetime. He gradually began to strip me of things, because I was basically living, doing whatever it is I wanted to do. God began to take away some of those bad. It's still an ongoing process, but I am not the man that God ministered to all those years ago. I certainly am not. Anyway, after a time, Hebrews chapter 6, verse 4 began to torment me. For those who don't know, that's the verse that talks about there being no repentance. It being impossible to restore people who had been in the faith, had tasted of the past to come, had been partakers of, Hebrews chapter 6, verse 4. Yeah. So it tormented me. And I'd pray from time to time for God to address that Hebrews verse for me. Things came to a head about a year and a half ago when I essentially I said, Lord, here it is. This is the way it is. Tell me in no uncertain terms that I'm not wasting my time. Hebrews says there is no repentance, no more repentance for the apostate. But you have asked me to walk with me, to walk with you. Now tell me if I'm wasting my time or not. I said the prayer. It was a very short prayer. I was getting ready to sleep, and I fell asleep. Yeah. I wake up in the morning, nothing. Of course, I get busy, ready for work, and off I go. As is my, as is usual, when I am having dinner after work, I'm scrolling through YouTube. The very first video I saw that day after I made that prayer was a video addressing Hebrews chapter 6, verse 4. I do not remember what the explanation was, but I remember the conclusion, which is that there is hope for the apostate who returns. I said to myself, all right, this is, sorry, excuse me. I said to myself, this is one man's interpretation of the scriptures. I prayed to God again. I said, Lord, show me, please. Convince me. I reconnected with an old friend of mine from way back when, and he's a mature Christian now. We chatted for about 3 hours. One of the issues we discussed was this, where he reassured me again, that's really not the way that verse is to be interpreted. We talked about the prodigal son, we talked about God being faithful and just to forgive us if we talked about a few things, which made sense. But what stuck out the most for me was the prodigal son story. But I went back again to God a third time. This time I was a little less cocky. And I said to God, I've made this prayer several times. I know it's you talking to me, but please, could you talk to me some other way? And I went to sleep. And this time God showed me a dream. I don't remember what I was doing. I was busy doing whatever, when all of a sudden I was yanked up. It was a very forceful yanking. It was like a summons. I felt myself being bundled up. It happened as quickly as it started, it stopped. And this time I was on a platform, and there's Jesus stood right in front of me, maybe 10 feet away from me. I couldn't tell whether he was mounted on his feet. I don't remember that detail. All I know is that Jesus was in front of me. And people ask, how do you know? I say, when you stand in front of him, you will know. Don't worry about that. So I had no time to process what was going on. It didn't really occur to me exactly. All I know, now people again say they felt love when they were in front of Jesus. That wasn't quite what I felt. You felt there was power. You knew this was someone of magnitude. You knew that. I felt I should not have been there. If I had my way, I'd have been at the back. I felt safe, but I felt I wasn't worthy to be where I was. I should have been at the back, but there I was. Now, Jesus barely even looked at me. He certainly didn't say anything to me. I don't know what it sounds like. He didn't say anything to me. He barely cast a glance at me. But his focus was, across my left shoulder. So when I turned around, I saw there was millions of people with me. I remember seeing a young Japanese woman behind me. There was millions of people, but then there was a separation between us and other people. But then down there, you could see that they looked like ants in the distance. And I said they outnumbered us maybe 10 to 1. Yeah. Excuse me. Outnumbered us at least 10 to 1. And there was a knowing in the spirit that he had marked those ones for destruction. And something else I forgot to mention was the expression on his face. It was stern, man. It was very stern expression. That's the Jesus that I saw. That's the Jesus I saw in my dreams. And then on cue, we let out a loud shout, and that dream faded away. I woke up. So God did 2 things for me with that dream. The first thing he did was tell me I was not wasting my time. But the second was to tell me, because in that dream there was a sense of urgency, there was a sense of imminence. So the second bit was to tell me that he was coming soon. This was about a year and a half ago, way before the whole Joshua rapture prophecy thing started. Okay? Now, in my first video, I had told the story of my daughter, a dream she'd had in October last year. She's 7, by the way. And she says she felt herself, in my case, I felt myself yanked up. She says she felt herself floating up, and it was a cool feeling. And then walking across a golden bridge into heaven, all dressed in white. And she says she remembers seeing beautiful buildings, beautiful trees, lots of fruit trees. She keeps talking about it. She says she was allowed to taste the oranges. She says it was Jesus himself who peeled the orange she ate. And she says she could taste it. It was juicy and so sweet. She talks about it all the time. Hasn't seen that dream since. But there was Jesus sat on the root of a tree, and we were sat on the grass, very beautiful green grass. Yeah, because she says she remembers seeing me, seeing her mom, her siblings, a couple other friends of ours. Yeah, we were just sitting and just chatting with. Hmm? So I don't remember the question I'd asked her once. She said to me, I think I was, yeah, she said to me, that this isn't the first time I'd read about heaven. I said, really? So we lived in we moved into this apartment 2023. So between 22 and 23, we lived in some other apartment. She says, while we were at that other apartment, she dreamt where she saw this magnificent angels everywhere, uh, playing beautiful music on the trumpets. And this magnificent building, which had, she began to stutter. I knew exactly what she wanted to say. I refused to help her out. I gave her time. She took me 20, 30 seconds before she found the word she was looking for. Pillars. Yes, she said pillars. I saw pillars. It had pillars. So I picked up my phone and I Googled, because I heard about, the U.S. Supreme Court several times in several heaven encounter stories. And as I pulled up the pictures, what's this look like? Oh, yeah, yeah. She says, yeah, that's what it kind of looks like, the U.S. Supreme Court. These pillars in front. I said, good. Then she said she saw Jesus walking out and she hugged him. And he told her, you're going to be with me forever. So she was telling me this story and saying to me, I know he's coming soon. Now, given I have been speaking to them a lot more about the rapture since the later part of last year, that this is a dream that she had at least 2 years before. At least 2 years before. So it didn't come to me. It wasn't too difficult for me to relate to Joshua's prophecy, in the light of some of the events that have happened in my own personal life. This is a call to those who are not ready to get themselves ready. There's no other way I know to get ready other than believing in Jesus Christ, putting one's faith in Him. Put your faith in Him. The time that we think that we have is running out. I honestly believe we are on our last legs in this world. If you're already a Christian, do not waver in your faith. Now isn't the time for it. I'm not even going to ask anyone to subscribe to this video, to this channel. I don't think there's time for any of that now. This is time for, if you're a Christian, stay strong in your faith. If you are not, make your way right with God. Because the time that we have is in fact closing in. Have a good day, everyone.